This is the story of a woman who stopped giving fish to people. Instead, she started teaching people how to fish and blazed a trail for others to follow. Today's story is called A New Direction.
Season 2 of the story features 12 trailblazers who started a business that changed the world. The story is brought to you exclusively by Salesforce, the world's #1 customer relationship management platform. More than 150,000 businesses are using Salesforce to blaze their own trails to success. And now, on to the story.
When the teenage girl stepped off the plane in Haiti, she expected the island to look and feel like a tropical paradise. It wasn't. Instead, she was greeted with something else. Her church group walked off the prop plane and onto a desolate airstrip. The air was hot and flies buzzed around them. They got into an old bus waiting for them. Once on the bus, their pastor looked at the group and told them that they were about to see real poverty firsthand. The bus departed, and the young girl stared through the window. They passed dozens of barefoot men, women, and children. Women scooped water out of trash-lined streams. A lone child covered in flies squatted outside a makeshift home built with rusted scrap metal. The bus was silent, and the young girl was shocked. The pastor, sensing what the group was going through, reminded them why they were there, to help in any way they could, and that each of them had a lot to give. The young girl was there on her spring break, and she spent most of it handing out shoes. At one point, a small child walked up, beaming with pride at their new pair of shoes. The child rattled off a quick Haitian Creole phrase to the girl. The pastor translated for the girl. She said, "This is the first pair of shoes she's ever had, and now she can walk to school. She says thank you." The young girl smiled at the child and choked back tears. She had never felt so much meaning and a sense of mission when she was out helping people. When she returned home, she tried to talk about her experiences, about how good it felt to help others. But the students at her school didn't want to listen to her stories. They were only interested in hearing the fun spring break stories. They made fun of the young girl for thinking she was so much better than everyone else for helping people in need. Of course, the young girl didn't think she was so much better. She had just had a great experience on spring break. She helped others and just wanted to tell her friends at school about it. Her friends at school didn't want to hear it. And the girl realized that maybe her definition of what friends meant needed an update. She was different now. She had changed dramatically in 1 week. But no one at home had experienced anything out of their comfort zone. They had spent their spring breaks partying or sleeping in. So just days after she returned, she prepared to go to prom. She cringed as she put on the opulent dress and impractical shoes that she was only going to wear once. The girl back in Haiti, the one with the new shoes that was so proud of them, flashed across her mind. The cost of her outfit could have fed a family in Haiti for 2 months. She buried her face in her hands and cried. She'd never been so ashamed. After prom, she threw herself into local community service. She went to soup kitchens, hospitals, and food banks. Those experiences felt good, but only up to a certain extent. One weekend, she and a group of other girls helped paint a house in a blighted neighborhood. They did everything, hauling ladders around the house, scraping up the old paint, priming, and painting the house. It was blisteringly hot. While they worked, they noticed a boy about their age who was sitting under a tree playing a Game Boy. "Who's that?" she asked her friend. "Oh, he's the kid that lives here," her friend said. "Really? Why isn't he helping?" she asked. "That's what I want to know," said her friend. The young woman was stumped. Why wouldn't he want to be involved? What incentive did he have to help himself and his family? Didn't he feel ownership? It reminded her of volunteering at the soup kitchen. Each Saturday, the same homeless people would call out, "See you next week." Did they really want to see her next week? Was she rude for critiquing them at all? She wasn't sure, but it felt like they didn't want to change, and that she was only helping him remain the same. She thought she'd been making a difference, but the people she served didn't want to be different. Those were the people at home. The people in Haiti were a completely other story. Soon she was in college and didn't have any free time to help. She felt conflicted about giving back. She didn't know if she should go abroad or if she should stay at home and try to help. She would still donate money to worthy causes, but felt detached from the outcome. There had to be a better way, and she was determined to find it. A few years later, after college, the young woman decided to take a leap. She sat in the airplane. She was clutching her backpack and terrified that she'd made one leap a little bit too far. The man in the seat next to her smiled and asked, "So where are you headed?" "Kenya," she said. What for?" asked the man. "I'm starting a new position over there next week," she said. "I just quit a job at Stanford, Graduate School of Business." The man blinked his eyes in disbelief. "You quit Stanford GSB? Well, I hope at least you're getting better pay where you're going." She gave him a smile that let him know the pay wasn't better, But it was just a 3-month internship in Eastern Africa, and it beckoned to her, despite the measly pay. She was headed to Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda to volunteer. The man shook his head and went back to reading the paper. The girl's mother had reacted exactly the same way. Why would she quit such a good job? The questions rattled through her head, and she thought back about the protagonist that had inspired her to get out and fix the world. It was Muhammad Yunus's fault. The young woman had attended his lecture at Stanford. He shared story after story of how his team empowered people in poverty through $100 business grants. The grants went to smart, hardworking people who had already taken steps to improve their own lives. Many of them were small business owners and entrepreneurs. Her heart raced. Muhammad was making a difference. How could she get involved? So she did something rash. She quit her job. She left for Africa, and now she was on the plane. She was on her way to Africa to meet the entrepreneurs who had received the $100 grants. Africa proved to be the perfect place for her. The people welcomed her with wide grins and open arms. She felt alive. She felt that meaning again. It had been a long time since she felt that sense of meaning and purpose. She whispered a silent thank you to Mr. Yunus. One day, she was walking a dirt path to meet with Patrick, a brickmaker who had received one of the grants. She scanned the wide green valley and the blue sky in front of her. It was thrilling to be out of the office and in the field. "Jumbo," said Patrick when they met and shook hands. Patrick dove into his story. He explained that he had fled his village in northern Uganda to escape the civil war. It was a difficult time for him. One morning, he was sitting in the dirt and wondering what he was going to eat that day. He started digging in the dirt to try and find something to eat. He realized that he could make bricks from the clay. He started to chip out a few, then he dried them in the sun. He did the same the next day, and then started selling them. Eventually, he had saved enough money to buy a wooden mold so the bricks would be the same size. He started selling them and started to make a little bit of money, enough to feed himself. "So what did you use the grant for?" she asked. Patrick said that he had needed to buy a kiln and matches so he could make even more bricks. The grant did that for him. It changed everything. Now he had employees. He pointed to the house behind him. He had built it himself. It was a brick house. With only $100, his life was changed forever. Dozens of similar stories poured in. Each had changed the life of the entrepreneur in a small but meaningful way. They had lifted themselves up from poverty. Some were able to buy a mosquito net or a lock for their door. Some could finally afford to send their children to school. No one asked her on the entire trip for a donation. She expected it, but it never came. All the people that she met asked for one thing. Now they wanted a loan to grow their business. One of the world's most popular quotes flashed in her mind. "Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime." Some people attribute that quote to Lao Tzu, others to Christ, but the young girl was seeing the quote in action, and it felt wonderful. On top of that feeling, she could see the positive ripple effect, and it sparked her imagination. So what could she do to help more people in this way? And what if she teamed up with her friends and family? Couldn't they collectively help even more people? With Muhammad Yunus's model running through her mind, a seed of an idea sprung to life. She returned to California and discussed it with her partner, Matthew. He built a website while she made plans to return to Uganda, this time with the digital camera. Back in Africa, she spent her first day gathering more stories. There was the story of a goat herder who had needed money to buy more goats. There was the story of a seamstress who wanted to buy a second sewing machine and hire her first employee. That night, the women posted their photos and stories on the website. Stories of poverty were reframed as stories of entrepreneurship. And then she spammed everyone she could think of and asked for money to help these people. The next day, her inbox was full. She had all the money she needed to lend to her Ugandan friends. She knew that she was onto something big. This idea could scale to entrepreneurs around the world. Whether it was dressmakers in Calcutta, farmers in Mexico, or small business owners in America, she knew it was going to work for all of them. She started an organization with one goal in mind, giving 0% interest microloans to entrepreneurs. It was a radical thought, an insane proposition for anyone lending money. Everyone knew that all the entrepreneurs were going to default, and she was going to be stuck with a bill. But she knew that if she vetted the people applying, and if the small loans weren't too large, maybe some of the entrepreneurs would pay it back. What if it was all of them? In the first year, her organization facilitated $500,000 of 0% interest microloans. By the fifth year, they had done $150 million in microloans. Today, they've helped over 1 million entrepreneurs and donors in over 200 countries. Her organization is, of course, Kiva, and that woman is Jessica Jackley. Her thesis was right. People are generally good, and if we have good intentions and help others, They might decide to repay it forward. Maybe they'll start a business. Maybe they'll hire a friend. Kiva boasts a 3% default rate, which is amazing since traditional banks consider these entrepreneurs high risk. Since 2005, Kiva has loaned over $1 billion. Jessica's story proves that if you're ever wondering what is next, or if you're looking for inspiration or meaning, you can always start by helping people. You can always go to areas where real poverty exists and start there. When you do, you might not only find inspiration and meaning, but you might find that one big idea that you've been searching for. With determination, you can even build a company or a machine that helps lift people up. Business, when done right, can be a force for good. In Jessica's words, things are possible in the world. You can do things that change not just the way you think and what you do, but the way other people think and how they're involved. The experience at Kiva led me to believe that. Or we might feel a lack of time or resources. Our worst enemy might just be comfort. We can get past that, all of that, when we decide to help those truly in need. We can take a small step, or we can take a significant leap, like quitting our job and boarding a plane to Africa. Whenever we're in doubt, or if we're not sure where to begin, Jessica's words are a great reminder. Pay attention to what is speaking to you. So what's speaking to you? Who can you help today? Maybe you'll see that person in the next few minutes, and maybe you decide to help them a little bit more than you normally would. If everyone decided to do that, just imagine the ripples. That's her story. What's yours going to be?
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Story. We have an exclusive giveaway for our listeners, 2 free tickets to Salesforce Connections in Chicago on June 12th through June 14th. Salesforce Connections is the digital marketing, commerce, and customer service event of the year. You'll learn how to create personalized experiences at every touchpoint and deliver service that drives growth and exceeds consumer expectations. Head to thestorypodcast.com and enter to win today. That's thestorypodcast.com. Thank you again to our presenting sponsor, Salesforce, for sharing these stories of business trailblazers who changed the world. Also, join Salesforce on May 1st in San Francisco for an upcoming event called Trailblazing Women. There, we'll hear from successful women in sales and marketing and learn how they've broken the glass ceiling and blazed new trails in their professions. Visit the link in the podcast show notes for more details.
If you like this episode of The Story, please help spread these stories by telling one friend. Also, you can hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. The Story is created by our team here at The Mission. The Mission is your #1 source for accelerated learning. To get more stories and podcasts like this, and our world-class newsletter, subscribe at themission.co. That's themission.co. See you next time.